He thought, inside the spatial rift, in the ruins of the Silver Age. There is a system for automatically correcting the system's flaws, that is, when the system fails, a defense astroguard that absorbs supernatural monsters. In other words, the entities guarding the dungeons quietly live their lives until the system kidnaps them to use as guards. Moreover, the creature absorbed by the system becomes more formidable thanks to it. In front of them is the same demon who defeated Claude, who owned the aura. If the level of this man is higher than that of ordinary Taggle before him, he becomes the guardian of the dungeon, and usually has otherworldly powers. Stefan shouted with a serious face. This monster is Chanathi, are not so timid as to be afraid of a tied-up opponent. Tisan asked, do they really intend to fight this monster? They have no chance, they will all die. Edward said he is grateful to him for his help, but he is only a barbarian who does not know the honor of a knight. There are things in this world worth risking your life for. The protagonist thought they were not even close to him. Edward ran to the attack and shouted, let all the knights put their lives on the line. Let them show what they are worth, Tisan thought. In bewilderment, they cannot even defeat the Taggle. How are they going, Tokyo? This monster at this time, Silen bowed his head and shouted, may the blessing of the goddess be with them. The knights began to attack the monster, but it began to kill. Then with ease, the protagonist said he told you it wouldn't work. Here comes another corpse. Flying, he wondered, do they really like it when all the bad stuff is knocked out of them? Stefan shouted, let them not lose heart, they are the knights of Alt. Even this demon is afraid of their courage. Tisan thought he already understood how stupid this main warrior is. No matter what they tell him, he won't listen, sir. Edward seemed relatively sane. He thought that at least he would understand, but he is trying to help Stefan defeat Jest. The main knight flutters like a butterfly and stings like a bee. All thoughto. Be honest with him. He barely scratched the monster. Silen shouted again at this time. Let Fian turn her Sicard staff on this evil entity. Let her release her sacred staff. In an instant, a magical attack flew at the monster's head. At this time, Lesia deftly dodged and struck. Stefan shouted that she was doing well. Tisan thought so. This has such anim. She is quite talented, even better than Edward. He would have singled her out as number 2 in this squad. Did Hirali underestimate them at this time? Todd began to use the technique and shouted, let the cold of the northern winds swirl in his hands. In an instant, a powerful snowstorm headed towards the monster. Suddenly the chains to which the monster was chained broke. A system window appeared, which said the current defense system is overloaded. The second phase is being activated. The monster jumped and crushed several knights. Stefan jumped on this creature, but the monster hit him and he fell to the ground. At this time, Lesia tried to dodge its attack and strike, but the monster caught her and created a huge fire volley which was directed towards Silent. Protagonist instantly found himself in front of him and took the fire volley. Tisan apologized with a serious face and said he was thinking for a bit and couldn't react in time. He thought, can he handle Just honestly? He himself is curious. What is the limit of his current strength? Can martial arts help at all? In the fight against a demon when he was a mage, he never took risks. If the chances of winning were small, but now he is a warrior, he gets goosebumps at the sight of a strong opponent. This is a feeling that he never experienced in his past life. Tisan shouted he has come a long way and has become a strong warrior. The master would like this. He used the ability of the chi bullet in thought. Drod always said, if he doubts, let him just strike first. The monster attacked and slightly grazed him. The protagonist looked at the wound and thought, this body can easily dodge an ordinary sword, but the demonic one could scratch him. Monster kicked him with lightning speed, and Tisan flew into the wall. Silen, excitedly, called out his name. The protagonist, covered in aura, said, with a serious face, that he was fine. Silen wondered in surprise. Is this the power off aura? Tisan thought, if he had held the blow, he would have had a chance to counterattack the endless beatings. Oft mentor took their toll. Dodging became a habit, while he will take advantage of the opportunity to policy his technique. The monster began to scream fiercely. The protagonist, preparing an attack, shouted. He did not understand anything but the battle begins. They clashed in a fierce fight. Stefan, surprised, watching what was happening, wondered how a lowly commoner could own an aura, when even he, an aristocrat, still could not awaken it. He shouted in horror. Who is this guy? What kind of monster is he, the protagonist? The knight frowned in fear and wondered what kind of person this was. The protagonist swung his fist and dealt a powerful blow. Riefenhardt dodged the enemy's attack. The guy grinned and felt what incredible strength he had managed to develop over all this time. With one blow, the young man tore off the monster's arm. Thiedmann's eyes lit up. The guardians of the ruins did not fall even after serious injuries because the dungeon endlessly pumped mana into them. Waves of energy ran through the body of the beast. The monster opened its mouth and spewed flames. The warrior lunged forward to dodge. The martial artist grabbed the enemy by the arm to practice at the hold. The protagonist kicked the monster in the face. He grinned and dealt a series of blows. Riefenhardt, his eyes burning, beat the enemy. The soldiers watched their fight from the side. Squinting, the boy realized Thoth had gotten carried away and thought about using the Horn of Disaster to finish it all off in one go. Its hoof. The boy realized that he couldn't use his skill because otherwise the whole place would collapse. Thurier gritted his teeth when Todd asked him to use his sword and cover it with aura. The fighter turned around and shouted that he didn't know how to do it. The man asked what that meant. The martial artist frowned and said that heckled only cover the body with aura because that was the teaching of their clan. Sillin opened his mouth wide and called out to him, holding back the paws of the monster. The protagonist turned around. The boy remembered that his body had high durability. Riefenhardt gritted his teeth and confirmed it. The saint put his fingers together and decided to cast a binding. The boy opened his eyes wide as the blessing of Filamentins fell on his body. The boy clenched his teeth in tension. He managed to throw the monster over himself. The warrior released its paws and threw it aside. The fighter grabbed his hand and realized that his comrade had used a divine spell not on an object, but on a human body. The healer closed his eyes and asked his friend to beat this monster too. Death. The martial artist ran forward to quickly finish this. He kicked the monster in the jaw. Then the protagonist hit it with his knees. Riefenhardt swung his fist furiously. During the attack, a huge amount of energy burst out of him. The demon's body flew into the air. An explosion of aura was heard. One blow tore the monster into pieces. The wizard blushed when he saw his friend who had just won. Mana flowed under the ceiling. Suddenly, her chain went out. Sillin opened his mouth in surprise and asked if that was all. The boy asked him to quickly remove the spell. Stefan then approached him, gritting his teeth. The boy claimed that their guide was doing a good job of hiding his identity and asked if they were really that insignificant to him. The commander looked at him from under his brows and said that he would never forgive him for trampling on his honor and suggested that he was enjoying watching their fight from the sidelines. The boy narrowed his eyes and denied this, and thought that it meant that he cared about what was happening, but that was not the case. The warrior turned away silently, and the captain asked how he dared to turn his back on him. The knight wanted to attack him, but the fighter ducked and raised the demonic sword. Stefan suddenly tripped and was unable to stay on his feet. The boy rolled down the rubble of the dungeon. The commander gritted his teeth and decided that the guide had dodged on purpose. Raising the sword, the martial artist said that he was not trying to mock him and asked him to take what they came for. The captain grabbed the demonic sword. Edward was surprised. This man was so careless with such a precious thing, and said that such are the privileges of the truly strong. The protagonist raised his eyebrows and thought that this weapon was second-ass compared to the one he usually used. Thekatane frowned furiously. Riefenhardt suggested returning to the village because there was nothing else to see here. The village of cattle was illuminated by the rays of the sun. Silin brought his hands to the baby to heal him. The boy donated a few coins to the villagers. The guy was surprised at how he knew how to do business and decided that it was a very profitable investment. Considering what kind of image would now be attached to the sacred order of Filanets, the cavalry rode along the riverbank. Sitting on his horse, Stefan said that they should find out who this man was. Edward agreed with him. The commander frowned sternly and decided that it was impossible for a commoner to be stronger than him. The young man walked up the hill. The warrior smiled broadly and said that he would now meet Cirrus. The fighter looked back and asked why the saint continued to follow him. The healer approached him and told him that there were priests who traveled the world and showed him the grace of God. The martial artist replied that they were called pilgrims. The wizard clenched his fists and explained that he wanted to return to the Holy Order, but he wanted to try himself in the role of a pilgrim. Sillin blushed and added that he would like to be in the company of the strongest of men. The protagonist remembered that Gerard had a similar look and hoped that these still looked at people differently. Frowning, Refenhart wondered why there were so many strange people around. Hyman wished that the boy would understand him and leave. The saint's eyes sparkled. The boy mentally compared him to a walking first aid kit. Closing his eyes, the young man decided that the healer would not interfere, and said that it was his choice whether to follow him or not. Walking along the hill, Thruzard asked how he managed to train his abs so much. The warrior replied that he simply pulled blocks of ice and received it in less blows from the mentor. At night, darkness fell on the city. A dim light illuminated the corridor of the palace. Someone asked how they even conducted the instructions. The man bowed and apologized to the master. Beret opened his mouth wide and said that elves must be faithful to their owners and give themselves to them with both soul and body. The heir of the syndicate put Hishins on his belt and was indignant that his slave was so ignorant. The girl replied that she was born that way. The scoundrel said that her look was irritating. The woman lowered her head and explained that she had such eyes from birth. The nobleman approached a Danathor elf and ordered his subordinate to buy him a normal slave, because this one was defective. Cirrus put her hand to her chest. She was being returned to the slave market for the third time. A map of the area appeared. The Theprincipality of Chatahan, an entire nation of traders, was located in the very north of the continent. Next to it was the Jura River, thanks to which trade flourished in this corner of the world. Not far away was the capital Zeppelin, the heart of the trade routes. Carts were traveling along the road. Walking along the street, Scylla noticed it. Everyone here was very busy. The protagonist explained that this was a country founded by traders who bought lands from the Kingdom of Graham. Rafart frowned confidently and decided that Cirrus must be somewhere here. The boy asked if they could slow down a little. The heroes saw how some nobleman was speeding up a local. Trick opened his mouth wide and accused him of slandering the Roof Fame Trading Association. The old man covered his head with his hands. The man threw a handful of coins at him and decided that this should be enough for blows. The saint ran up to the poor man and asked if he was okay. The healer said that they needed to contact the police. The townsman began to collect the coins and replied that there was no need for that because such money will even help him start his own business. The wizard opened his mouth in surprise and asked if he was really going to act as if nothing had happened to him just because of money. The boy reminded him that everyone here was crazy about money. The old man ran away. Sillin realized that he had never been to such a place. The young man told him that here, you can even buy your way out of prison if you have enough money. The boy frowned and asked what business his friend could have in such a city. Thuarir crossed the bridge and explained that he needed to buy something. The saint asked what, exactly. The fighter narrowed his eyes and said that he wanted to buy an elf. The saint covered his chest with his hands and asked what was wrong with him. The martial artist said that it was not what it seemed. The healer quickened his pace and expressed dissatisfaction with the behavior of men. The protagonist thought about not being able to tell him about his past life. Refart looked at his companion and said that he was actually a man too. The wizard confirmed this with disappointment. There was a sign in the form of a teapot on the building, sitting in a chair. TK asked if the Rain Trading Association was deceiving merchants and concluded that they were accusing them only to get money. The elves surrounded him. Beret entered the room. The man said that they had not seen each other for a long time and asked what happened to the slave he bought recently. The syndicate heir grinned and realized he couldn't get away from this conversation and replied that he had returned her 2 weeks ago because she hadn't listened to him at all. The head of the trade union asked him with his mouth wide open if he couldn't tame even a slave, and said it wasn't surprising that Karen couldn't even make it into the top. Taking a sip of tea, the merchant wanted to see his friend's face when he managed to tame this girl and decided to visit Elftenheim. Clouds were floating above city. The protagonist's mouth dropped open in amazement, and he asked what his companion was doing. Trying to do push-ups, Sillin replied that he was training, and Refenhart wondered why he had no muscles at all after all that training. The boy asked him not to push himself too hard, and the boy sat down on the floor and said that everything will be fine. The young man frowned when he saw a bright light. The saint smiled sheepishly. The warrior reset his eyebrows in confusion and realized why his friend wasn't gaining muscle mass. Imagining a pocket watch, the fighter remembered that healing magic was like turning back time, and muscles grew from microdamage and subsequent regeneration. The healer closed his eyes. The martial artist realized that he was returning his muscles to their original state when he healed himself. The wizard looked at him and asked if something was wrong. The protagonist replied that everything was fine and promised to show him a more effective mid a little later. Reifenhardt asked if his long hair didn't interfere with his training. Silin smoothed his hirend, explained that it grew back very quickly anyway. Heading towards the exit, the boy said that he now had no money and said that he needed to go to the slave market. The boy shouted that he would go with him. As he imagined the shackled creatures, the young man thought that there were all sorts of slaves being sold at this auction, but the most popular were the elves. The warrior imagined elves and orcs of different ages and categories, each with their own price. Sitting on the couch, the fighter remembered that another reason for their popularity was their lifespan, and that their adolescence lasted longer than usual. The saint told him that this place had its own year history. The martial artist frowned and decided that calling the slave market an elven paradise was very low. The healer said that he had never been to such a place before. The wizard blushed and suggested that the elves were treated better than the orcs. The protagonist explained that both wear slave contracts and asked if they would like that. Silin raised his eyebrows and wondered if life under the tutelage of more civilized people was not better than living in the wilderness. Reifenhardt narrowed his eyes and realized that this was exactly what the average person thought. Looking ahead, the boy realized that people's mentality could not be changed so easily and decided that he needed to found a new kind of empire, different from the one in the past. The man entered the room and apologized for keeping the customer waiting. The elves smiled seductively. The boy closed his eyes in embarrassment. The merchant decided that this was too much for her and wondered why he would take the girl to such a place. Covering his face with his hand, the young man was outraged by the forest fare's fall so low and asked if there were any dark-skinned slaves among them. The merchant called his taste rather peculiar. The warrior turned away and said that he did not mean that at all. The saint asked if he himself had not said anything about the harm of slavery, raising his hand. The man said that they had one darkened slave and asked the customer to follow him. The heroes went out into the corridor. The young girls were doing gymnastics. The merchant explained that they were all receiving a-prepare education so that they would always be in demand. Other women were cooking. The merchant added that they were fed only fresh nuts, fruits, and vegetables because proper nutrition helps them smell good. Frowning menacingly, the fighter said that he did not need all these stories and asked him to simply take them to the darkened elf. The man awkwardly turned away. He approached the guards and said that he needed room. In the room, slaves were fighting each other. The merchant explained that this was a training hall where they were trained to become assassins. The merchant closed his eyes and said that among them was the product that his client was interested in. The martial artist began to cry. Cirrus clenched her teeth in anger. The girl swung a rolled-up paper